Hello and welcome to Two Hopes Garage. My name's Jace. Thank you very much for joining us. In this video, I remove the EGR pipe from my wife's 2018 Volvo XC60 D5. Now that is the model with the PowerPulse. The reason I mention it is that the EGR pipe in this model has an extra branch going towards the PowerPulse valve. If you've got a non-PowerPulse model such as the D4, I don't believe that they've got this branch. The procedure is very similar, and if anything, it's actually a bit easier because you've got a wee bit less to contend with. So it's a common problem on these that the pipe corrodes at the flange. It eventually splits. If it gets bad enough, it detaches itself completely, and you'll get fumes coming into the cabin, and if it's completely detached, rough running as well. This one was just at a stage where we were getting fumes into the cabin. It's a relatively simple change, but access isn't grand. So I'll show you whereabouts you can get in about the various different bits and pieces. One thing I would say, I've struggled a lot to get torque figures for the various fasteners. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I like to get a torque figure. So it pains me a wee bit that I couldn't get them. So in the video, they're not mentioned. I did it largely by feel and also by looking up the typical torque figures for the respective different size fasteners on the car, going into whatever material they were going into. But I would suggest that you do possibly a wee bit more research than me and try and get those torque figures. And I'll tell you what, if anyone does manage to get torque figures, share the knowledge a wee bit. That's what YouTube's all about. Stick them into the comments below, and it would be very much appreciative of that, as I'm sure would anyone else looking up the video as well. One other thing. So during the video, somehow I have managed to not film myself physically removing and physically fitting this pipe. All the preps filmed, all the follow-up works filmed. For some reason, I didn't manage to get me pulling the pipe out and putting it in. I did do it, honest. The access there, it means that even if I did film that, it wouldn't bring an awful lot to the party in terms of filming. So, aye, it's worth watching anyway if you're going to change one of these. The dealer's chart, we're going to charge £300 to supply and fit one. I got the pipe off the dealer for £155. Is it worth the £150 or so saving doing it yourself? That's for you to judge. It takes a wee while. I took quite a while doing this, although I was filming it. And also it was my first time, and I didn't know what size fasteners were, etc. And some of them are hard to find, especially this, are hard to access. Next time I do it, if I ever do it again, it'll be a whole lot quicker. But for 150 quid, yeah, it's up to you. It might be worth taking it to the dealers. If you want to try it yourself though, have a wee watch of the video. Anyway, enough of me talking a lot of nonsense, and let's get straight into the video. Thank you very much. Oh, and by the way, thank you to all the new subscribers, and also a big thank you to the old subscribers for bearing with me. My tiny channel's getting just that little bit bigger each time, and I'm genuinely chuffed to bits. If I could get to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, that would be amazing, and it would help me grow the channel a wee bit and maybe bring on another project. Although I realise the Mercedes project is a slow project indeed. But anyway, back to the video. Thank you very much. Enjoy. Cheers. So we'll get our engine cover off. That's just 4 Torx T40s. They shouldn't be tight. They'll just pull up out the way. Don't remove them. They'll be part of the, they're attached to the cover. They're captive. 3 and 4. Let's get that out of the way. Put it somewhere safe. Next up, we're just going to remove this from the airbox. I've just unclipped them. Oh, focus. Yeah, just unclip them from underneath there and simply pull out. This might be in the way a wee bit, so you can unclip them from down here. For the moment, I'm just going to leave it there. So looking at our airbox, moving in closely, we have got a wee sensor for presumably the MAF, definitely an airflow sensor. Push down and a bit of a wiggle and it should come straight off. There we go. I actually cleaned this up with a wee bit of contact cleaner. All the dust and stuff would make it tricky to remove. We'll give that a further clean later. Next up, we'll disconnect the airbox from the inlet pipe here. So we'll just undo that. You can either use an 8mm socket, or as I happen to have a flat blade handy, I'll undo that. And that should just pull away from there. What I will do is we'll get the airbox lid off. What you may find is that your MAF sensor wiring conduit has been tie wrapped to the airbox lid. So just need to snip that one and take that off so that you can remove the airbox from the vehicle. What you should be able to do then is just pull the airbox straight out. I'm actually going to separate it just because I'm going to check the condition of the air filter inside. 6 Torx T25 fasteners round at this, and this location. Is there one at the back? Yeah, there's one at the back as well. So we take them out. They're captive, but just keep an eye on them for not falling out. You don't want to lose them. There's 2. I'm also checking to see if Volvo have fitted a Volvo air filter at the last service, because they don't always do that. I've had some cheap nasty ones in here. I'll not name names, but they weren't Volvo. So 6 of them off. That should just lift right off now, especially if you've disconnected your MAF sensor and snipped the wiring loom. Not snipped the wiring loom, don't snip the wiring loom, snipped the tie wrap that holds the wiring on there. So there's our air filter. It's a Volvo, so always good there. Put that somewhere safe. So there's a rubber mount here and there's a rubber mount at the back. Should just be able to pull that straight out. There's that one. And that one there. That is. We attach somewhere else I've forgotten about. No. That's our airbox away. Right, I think I've been chatting away merrily to myself, thinking it was videoing. So this air inlet hose needs to come off. There is an 8mm bolt just here. We'll undo that. Oh, before we undo that. So, this breather hose here goes on to the air inlet. It's got those clips that everyone loves. They have to squeeze them together. I don't happen to have the correct tool for it, so I've just used some Nipex pliers. I'll try and use these left-handed to get out of the way of the camera. Maybe not. Squeeze them together and pop it off. It doesn't pop off that easily. I struggled for 2 or 3 minutes before eventually getting a little bit of silicone WD-40 sprayed up in there, and that came away okay. So once that's come, because you want this nice and steady while you're pulling away at that, then you can remove your 8mm bolt from this little mount. And it's a good size, pop it away somewhere safe. After that, you've got a 7mm Jubilee clip down here. I've already loosened it off partially anyway. So that should be loose enough, it's not doing anything anymore. What we do have, there's a vacuum line routes down through here and is clipped in to this, or is
sitting in a recess on this air hose. So just watch you don't pull that away when we disconnect this. Keeping an eye on our vacuum hose. There we are. A bit of shuggling. I'm sure this will come out. Just been careful not to catch it on any pipes or lines on the way out. Grand. So now I can almost see the pipe that we need to be getting out. Okay. So there is our forward end of the pipe there. Going to what I believe is our PowerPulse valve. There's a small end coming up here, and the other end disappears up here somewhere. I'll show you that nearer the time. So I thought I'd just have a quick look with the borescope to show you where that is cracked, and also to see what fasteners I was looking for. I thought it was T40s. That does not look like a T40, and the one underneath it looks different again. So we'll see if we can get in amongst these. So the ones down this end weren't massively tight. I've already slackened them off with a bigger T40, and I'll just slacken them off a wee bit further. We'll leave them in place for the meantime though. Let's see if I get on this with this in here. It's in the way a bit. We might need to move this. Yeah, let's move this. So looking down the bottom here, I'm going to point to it with my little handy dandy ice pick, is a wee V-band clamp. That is for the smaller of the two pipes, where it attaches to what I believe is the PowerPulse valve. That is on an 8mm, and I'm going to need to get that slackened off. It looks like I might need to move this PowerPulse valve just for a bit of access, but we'll see how we go. If I do have to move it, there is, let's see, 1, 2, and see if you can see it, difficult to see, a third bolt up there that holds that bracket in place. Rather than disconnect the valve, I'm probably just going to move that whole bracket. I believe the gear shift linkage may need to come out for that, but we'll see how we go. The two bolts, you can actually feel them from round the back here. They're 10mm. That took a wee bit of searching. And once you've got them loosened off, probably the initial, pretty tight initially, and once they're loose, they're grand. Here's the setup I've been using on this one. So I've got a 3/8 drive ratchet handle, 10mm single drive socket on a wobble bar, and that'd be important. You just want that wee bit of flex in case you're not getting straight on it. You also get the little, it's almost like a CV joint extensions. They might work as well. 10mm on a wobble drive on the 3/8 worked for me. In fact, on the top bolt, I think it was, I didn't need the extension at all. I could get straight on it with the ratchet handle. A wee bit tricky to find initially, but once you get that bit of muscle memory, they're actually okay. Am I on? There we go. So I can just turn this round by twisting the extension. I'm hoping my coupon's not in the shot here, but I've got a feeling it might be. Obviously taking great care not to drop anything. Oh, there we are. Probably will be able to see the amount of soot that's come off there, because that has been blowing away there. So I've popped the V-band clamp off the PowerPulse pipe, and now I'm just getting the two T40s out of their housing. They look to be pretty long, longer than necessary, really. So, just showing you what I've had to do here. The focus, this valve here is a PowerPulse valve, I believe. Now, the can get it to focus. It sits in a bracket. You can see that bracket moving. There's 3 10mm bolts that hold that on. The V-band clamp is loose on that valve now, or on that pipe, and you can see I've got flex there to get that pipe out, hopefully. The other thing was the T40 on the bottom here was getting the ratchet was getting obstructed by this, so I'm just going to move this out of the way to enable me to take this off. So that's the bottom T40 off. The V-band's off of the PowerPulse pipe, if that's what it is. And the 2 connectors up at the back are out as well. So essentially that pipe should be free to come out. I've not disconnected the gear linkage, but I have dismounted the PowerPulse valve just to give a wee bit of flex. I'm hoping that's going to be enough. I'm not a big one for disturbing stuff if I don't need to. If I have to, we'll disconnect it. But at the moment, it's looking like I don't really need to. Says the man who's just about to find out it's absolutely imperative that you disconnect the gear linkage to get this valve out the way. Just to do a wee quick comparison of the pipes before the new one goes in. You can see where all the soot's been blown by on that one, and it's cracked probably around about 70% of the circumference of that pipe where it goes into the flange. On the new one, compared to the old one, you can see they've strengthened that. So hopefully we won't get any more issues with that. I'll just show you that there. I'm trying to remember if that's a part number. If it's not, we'll put the part number up. So we'll get a new pipe in. Right, I've managed to avoid getting images of the new one going in and the old one coming out, which is spectacular. I've not removed the gear selector, which means I don't have as much movement in the PowerPulse valve, which makes it a wee bit more awkward to get this in and out. However, it's not impossible. It took me a couple of minutes just to wiggle it in there. Is it worth taking the gear selector off? It definitely would give you better access. I just wasn't over keen on disturbing stuff if I didn't really need to, and I felt I didn't really need to. So yeah. However, and this popped off while I was lining things up, but that's okay, because we just pop it back on again. So no biggie there. So pop that on. Like so. Let's make sure our gasket's on there. What we'll do the now is I think we'll put our 2 T40s on there loosely, just to hold that in place. So we'll get this lined up and we'll get our T40s. As always, when you're putting the bolts in, make sure you can start them nice and easily by hand, just to ensure that nothing's getting cross-threaded. With this as well, just as you're putting it in, just make sure that gasket's properly located on there. So I'm not going to go wild and tighten these up completely just now, just getting them in loosely, just to get that pipe roughly in place, which should also ensure that it's roughly in place up at the important end. Well, they're both important ends, but you know what I mean. So these bolts were pretty sooty. Am I recording? Yes, I am. So these bolts were pretty sooty. So I've given them a bit of a clean up, reusing them. The washers should be captive on these. And yeah, should be able to reach in at the back. See roughly where our pipe is lined up. Hopefully everything's sitting nicely. I just started the pipe at the back there. So let's just have a wee look if I can find it. Down a bit. There we are. Started putting the bottom bolt on. Just see that down there by hand. And moving up. There we are. You see the top bolt is still to go in. And I'm not sure if you're going to catch that, but the lugs for the gasket look good. So we'll crack on, we'll put the top bolt in now. Again, you can start this by hand. Let's try the right hand on this one. Bottom one is actually a good bit easier to get on, but it's still doable. That's that one started. Once again, ensuring you can turn that easily by hand, so you know you're not cross-threading it. Now that it just started by hand, what I'm going to do is just get the 3/8 driving extension with the 10mm square drive on the wobble part of the extension, and we'll just see if we can get them tightened up a wee bit better. There's the bottom one. Let's find the top. I can just turn that away quite nicely into the housing. It should be super easy at this point. So for the bottom one, I'm just going to go on it now with my little stubby flexi ratchet. If I can find it. A little bit suspicious about how tight that's going. So again, borescope on. Let's see what's going on. Top one is looking grand. Bottom one, let's have a look from a different angle. Let's go on to T40s now. Tighten them up a bit. There's one. Get this lower one tightened up. So the lower T40 is a wee bit tricky to get on once you've got that PowerPulse valve back in place. And you do need the PowerPulse valve back in place. So I've got a little T40 in a bit holder on 6-inch quarter drive ratchet extension, and that's tightened into place. So now that's a fixed element of the pipe in place and tightened down a bit. We move on to what's essentially the movable element. So the V-band clamp goes over, if you see it, we just push the PowerPulse valve into the bottom end of that pipe, and we get a V-band clamp on there and tighten it down. The bracket that it sits on is on slotted or is on oval holes, so it allows a little bit of scope for adjustment, so that just sits in a nice place. So we'll get the V-band clamp on. I don't know how much I'll be able to film of this, just because I kind of need both hands, and I'm not sure we'll get on a good angle looking down into it. So here's where we're at with the V-band clamp. You might want to run a wee M5 tap and die through the hole and over the screw, or over the bolt. I found the threads were a wee bit messy and a bit reluctant to engage if you're not replacing it. So once you've got them seated nicely and sitting in a decent position to tighten down, then we'll get them nipped up, and keep an eye on your bolt holes there, just to make sure the bracket's sitting in a nice position as well. So we'll crack on with that for the moment. So I've got the V-band clamp tightened now. Don't go too crazy on it, it's only a little clamp. Again, I don't have torque figures for this, so yeah, I'm never quite comfortable doing stuff without the torque figures. Now look at getting our 3 10mm bolts dropped in into their various spaces. There is still a wee bit of movement on that to make sure everything lines up. So I got the 310mm bolts dropped into position there. Like I said, the bracket's on ovals, so there's definitely room for adjustment, so you can get it in where your V-band clamp is sitting most comfortably. It's just a case of tightening these up now. Hand tightened them earlier on, and we're just going to nip them up. Once again, I have no torque figures for this, so I'm just going to do them reasonably tight. Yeah, bearing in mind that's going into aluminium, so don't want to strip that gearbox out, which I think is what it's sitting on. So nice and easy on them, not too crazy. That'll do. One at the front, I'll do that one. And one at the back, which we need to move the pipe out the way for a wee bit. And that'll do that. So our PowerPulse bracket has got the 310mm bolts screwed into the gearbox housing there. The V-band clamp is tightened up. I'm going to check the T40s and the 10mm bolts on here just for tightness before I start putting it back together. Again, no torque figures. I looked and I looked, but I could not find the torque figures for these. So I'm probably just going to use the typical average torque figures for the respective bolt size going into whatever material they're going into. I think this is alley at the front, and I'll check what the back is. Right, so doing a wee quick run through of where we are at. The T40s on the back of here are tightened down. I've just done them by feel. I don't have torque figures, as I've said, they feel tight. Moving on, we can see our V-band clamp is in place on that lower pipe. That's tightened up again by feel. As are our, I don't know if you can see these, 1, 2, and peeking over the top just there, are 3 bolts holding the PowerPulse valve bracket in place. Moving on round to the side where we can't see it, but the round at the back here, the behind the heat shield, the 2 10mm bolts at the other end of the pipe have been tightened up by feel once again because I don't have the torque figures. So now we're in a position where we can, and like I say, the gear selector wasn't disturbed during this fit, and I managed to do it without it. However, made it a little bit more awkward, but yeah, it was fine for me. So now in a position to get our big pipe back in again. So feeding our big intake pipe back in again, being careful not to disturb too many lines. Let's just check this one. That one's okay. Pop it round the side there. A little bit shuggling, but that's okay. Just noting that this vacuum line is going to get clipped just in there. Make sure our hose here at the back just locates over everything. Yeah, I'll just take care when we're sliding this over, just to make sure we're nicely engaged. There we go. Like I say, vacuum hose in there, and our breather. Let's remember to pop that on. Get the old Nipex pliers on, slacken all that off. You know what, we'll put this in first, because we're not wanting that flopping around while we're trying to get our breather on. Once again, making sure it goes on nicely by hand, which it does. Getting the breather on, excuse the arms, it's about there. I'm going to have a wee look at this with the borescope. It's going to tighten the Jubilee clip up here. It's a 7mm. Oops, let's go the other way. And just make sure you're tightening it up in a position that's going to give you decent access should you need to come back in there again. It's a wee bit slow going because I'm using an open-ended. Right, next up, let's get our airbox in, just to make sure our valves are there, and we're locating it in through here and here. I've put a wee bit of silicone just in those two mounts there, just to make things that wee bit easier. Let's pop that in. Make sure this goes on nicely, like so. That just sits in there, and that one just sits in the back there. Also, pop this wee hose back in, making sure that your little clips seat properly. Let's get a screwdriver on that, as I did earlier. That did the trick just fine. Just making sure it's all seated nicely. Your clamps in a good position for access. That's grand. Let's get our wee sensor back into position, hooked up, and finally, for here anyway, I just did a little diddy tie wrap, just keeping that wiring in place. I'll pop that on, like so, snip off our excess. There we go. So that's our airbox in place. It's worth checking that the intake is engaged properly there, as it is. That's sitting on its mount there and there. All our fasteners for the airbox lids are tightened down. Airflow sensor, the connector's hooked up. And that's us ready to pop our cover back on again. Right, so once we've made sure all our tools are out of there, we'll pop our cover on, like so. I've taken the liberty to give it a wee wipe. And these just tighten down with T40, very gently. You don't need to go crazy with these, or else you will strip them, because they're just going onto a plastic thread. I think that one is a wee bit stripped actually. Back one's on. This one up at the back. There we go. That's in. Yeah, that one doesn't feel too grand either. That's us. Keep our horrible diesel noises muffled. And that's us done. So I'm just going to take that for a wee test drive. If you've disconnected the battery, which you should have done really, reconnect your battery. And that's us. Grand. So that's it for the Volvo EGR Pipe. A wee bit of a tricky one, especially in terms of access, but well worth doing, and the results have been good. As I didn't have the torque figures and torqued them as I saw fit, I have continued to monitor the bolts just to make sure they're not coming loose and to make sure there's no leaks. If you've done similar, I would suggest doing the same and having a wee check a couple of times after you've done a few drives, just to make sure that everything's tickety-boo. Keep your eye out on the channel for future Volvo content, and if you haven't checked out my Mercedes W126 just off shot there, and you like a classic old Mercedes, there's loads of content on that, and there's loads of content coming up on that, so give that a wee watch if you want. If you don't want, don't bother, there's plenty more Volvo stuff to come. So aye, thank you very much for joining us, hope to see you again soon, and aye, that's all for just now. Cheers, goodbye.